Good evening and welcome to the August 5th, 2024 meeting of the City of Summit's Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Joe Steiner and I chair the Zoning Board this year. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed on the city's YouTube page and is also broadcast on Summit's governmental channel, which is Comcast Channel 34 and Verizon Channel 30. A transcript of this meeting is also being taken using the video and audio. So we need to have all speakers go to voicemail and turn the thing off. So we need all speakers to utilize one of the microphones. And some of my cohorts who are watching some of the prior transcripts, videos, have told me that there are issues if you're more than 3 feet away from a microphone. They may have trouble hearing what it is that you're saying, and they do get some of them get their certifications by watching the videos. So please, if you're planning to talk, come to a microphone. We also have a hearing assistance device. If you need that, please see Ms. Sulios and then return it to the dais afterwards. The exits in the room are a little changed tonight. They are behind you and also to my right, your left. But the one behind you is not directly behind you. They're asking you to go through what at one point used to be the judge's chamber and now is a conference room that allows you to go that way. Ms. Sulios, would you please call the roll of the members?
Sure. Chairman Steiner?
Here.
Vice Chairman Liketz?
Here.
Mr. Yuko?
Here.
Mr. Nelson?
Here.
Ms. Zahn?
Here.
Mr. Curran?
Here.
Mr. Millay?
Here.
Ms. Toth is excused. Ms. Chifo?
Here.
Mr. Feskins is excused. Mr. Chanchuli?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Now for some other introductions. Andy Ball to my right is the zoning board's attorney. If the applicant has an attorney, they will work together on all the various legal issues, and Mr. Ball will advise the board on any issues in the law that may apply to that case. Ms. Sulios, who just called the roll, is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. She works with the applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Also present at the table to our right in front here or on your left is Marie Raffi from Collier Engineering, our board's engineering firm. Also seated at that table is a representative from Burgess Associates, our board planner, Ed Snikus. These experts provide input to the board and also do not vote on the applications. We have 7 regular members on this board and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Before we enter into our executive session to vote on the application, you will be advised how many votes are required. Each case will begin with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the process that has taken place to date and the variances that are required. We then hear from any additional expert witnesses that the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may then ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals have completed their questioning, the public gets an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think of the application. That will come a little bit later. Please, when you come up to ask a question, again at the microphone, give us your name and address. Once the board members and the board professionals have missed a paragraph. Before you ask your questions, make sure you spell your name and provide your address. Our court reporter, again, needs to be able to get all this information. After all the witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak. And at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. And you will be sworn in for that testimony. Then the public hearing is closed, and we enter what is called executive session, where the board members up here discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but normally you will not be able to participate in that discussion. The city zoning officer has asked that we remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to any of the conditions contained in the resolution. If you have questions about any of those conditions, please consult with your experts or with city staff through Ms. Zulios. The resolutions that document the board's decision are normally going to be available 1 month after we decide your case. What we're going to do now is ask each of the applicants to come up and give us a quick answer to 2 questions. 1, how many witnesses will you have tonight? And B, how long will it take? Can you get it done in 30 minutes? And we will begin with Bristol-Myers Squibb.
Chairman, good evening. Kevin Moore with the firm of Stevenson Lee, representing Bristol-Myers Squibb. I have 3 witnesses, and I think we can get done in 20 minutes.
Okay, we'll do our best to accommodate. I like that answer.
Depends on how many questions y'all have.
Well, we'll see. The second one is 61 Woodland Avenue, Thanos and Pamela Panagopoulos. Did I get close?
Very close. Evening to the board. My name is Thanos Panagopoulos. My wife Pamela is here with me. We have our architect Tom Conway with us here, and I don't believe it will take more than 30 minutes to discuss our home.
Okay, thank you. And then 25 Plymouth Road, Christopher and Lisa Varelli.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Varelli. This is my husband, Chris. We have our architect, Steve Majewski, here with us tonight, and I don't think it would take more than 30 minutes to do that there.
Okay, thank you. And 10 Waldron Avenue, Peter and Kristen Tuhill.
Yeah, this is Peter Tuhill.
And who else is with us?
Number 5, Quentin Tuhill.
Welcome for your first public appearance.
Hopefully should be under 30 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so
He has
we.
to be sworn in too.
I'm sorry?
He has to be sworn in too.
We're going to swear everybody. We'll swear. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to swear at them. Okay, let's begin with Bristol-Myers Squibb.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Moore with the firm of Stevenson Lee, and I represent the applicant this evening, Bristol-Myers Squibb Company. If you recall, the last hearing on this application was at your June 3rd, 2024 meeting. At that hearing, we presented our application for a D2 use variance, a C2 height variance, and preliminary and final site plan approval for the addition of 2 9,000-gallon liquid nitrogen storage tanks. And they are in the parking lot in the vicinity of building S12 on our Summit campus. The liquid nitrogen is required for BMS's commercial production and processing of CART and biotherapeutic therapies at the Summit campus. At the conclusion of the June 3rd, 2024 hearing, you had requested that BMS explore the alternatives of placing the liquid nitrogen storage tanks underground, using multiple smaller liquid nitrogen storage tanks, or using horizontally mounted liquid nitrogen storage tanks. BMS has explored these alternatives, and as Mr. Ahmed Osman, who is the bulk systems engineer for the eastern region of Airgas, which is BMS's liquid nitrogen supplier, will testify tonight, 2 9,000-gallon vertically mounted liquid nitrogen storage tanks remain BMS's preferred alternative. Further, as Mr. Osman will testify tonight, the 2 horizontally mounted 9,000-gallon liquid nitrogen storage tanks, the only feasible alternative to the 2 vertically mounted 9,000 liquid storage tanks, will cause BMS an approximately 40-week delay because the tanks have to be custom manufactured. However, we are well aware of your concern about the visibility of these tanks to the neighboring properties. Therefore, tonight, we are proposing to install 38 8 to 10 feet tall green giant arborvitae evergreen trees in strategic locations on our property, and to paint the tanks the same color as Building S12. As you'll see when our engineer testifies, this makes the tanks virtually invisible from the neighbors' properties. Additionally, at the June 3rd meeting, you were concerned about the safety issues regarding the proximity of the diesel fuel storage tank to the proposed liquid nitrogen storage tanks, and Mr. Osmond will address this concern as well. As I'd alluded to earlier, I have 3 witnesses this evening. Ahmed Osmond, who's the bulk systems engineer for the East Region of Airgas BMS's liquid nitrogen supplier, and Peter McCabe, PE, who's the senior project manager with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services, Inc. Mr. Cerati, who testified at the last meeting, is on vacation someplace on a beach, so Mr. McCabe will be taking his place. And finally, Mr. James Kyle, who testified last time, our professional planner. With that, I'd like to call Mr. Osmond.
Before you do that, are there any questions for the attorney? I do have one.
Yes.
You supplied a new narrative.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between the two? Because maybe some people have read one and not the other. Can we know what the differences were?
The only difference is that there were a series of questions, answers to the questions you had at the last meeting in the one that I had supplied after the last meeting. Those turned out to not to be accurate, so this one just has those answers removed and corrected the number and size of the existing tanks per Mr. Mala's concerns at the last meeting.
And they will be testified to again tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't, if somebody's using the wrong set of numbers, they'll be
Well,
corrected
those
tonight.
numbers are right on all of them, so on the 2 I submitted, so you don't have to worry.
Okay.
I also have a question because I don't think any of the witnesses will be addressing this. It didn't come up in the last meeting, but with the addition of 2 9,000-gallon liquid nitrogen tanks, effectively, Bristol-Myers Squibb is creating 400% of their current storage. So 100% of what you have now, plus another 300%, right? You have 6,000 gallons, you're adding 24,000 gallons total storage, potential storage.
Well, we're adding
9,000 total, or each tank is 9,000?
18,000.
So, right,
So we're adding
18,000.
18,000
Correct,
gallons.
plus 6,000 that you currently have is 24,000
Right.
gallon capacity, right, of liquid nitrogen. The testimony said that you're expecting production to increase by only 45%.
Yes.
So, 6,000 times 145%, even 200% to give yourselves a buffer for extra use would not come anywhere close to 18,000 gallons. Even if you just doubled your volume, you'd be at 12,000 total. So I just didn't see anywhere an explanation for why this amount of storage was required. And I realize this is an expansion of already non-permitted use, but it seems to me that there must be there may be plans for other expansion that hasn't been discussed,
Well, to
and how would
clarify,
that?
the only use that's not permitted is the tank use. The use that we're making of the facility is a permitted use. I just want to clarify that.
Correct, but it's an expansion, right? That was in the testimony, an expansion of a non-permitted use. And I'm wondering.
Well, the tanks are the non-permitted
Right,
use.
I'm wondering why we have to go up to 400% volume capacity. There is no testimony to that anywhere.
The 45% expansion is what is, that's happened, and we have to meet that need. But we anticipate further expansion, so that's why we're seeking the approvals now.
Will that all be testified to by some of the people who are going to testify
No,
tonight?
that's
Are
my
any of them
representation.
qualified to testify about that?
Yes, Mr. Gibbert is here, and he's
Okay, then
testified,
maybe
but we weren't planning on.
Maybe we should hold that question and have it during his testimony.
Well, I wasn't planning to have him testify because I thought we'd established the need for the tanks yet last month, and this month we were just going to address why they need to be vertical rather than horizontal and not underground, and then show the landscaping we're doing to mitigate their view. So
All
if you
of
would-
which we appreciate, but I think if we have a member that has a question and we have a witness that can
Sure,
answer it,
Mr. Gibbert.
we should probably let him
Why
testify.
don't we do that first? Because frankly, that's right as well, right?
I have no problem solving it right now.
No.
Is that, and we will need to swear him in because he has not testified before.
Stan, you want to come and,
Hello, good afternoon, or good evening.
We're going to swear you in first.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
It's Stan Gerbic, last name is G-R-B-I-C, Director of Engineering for BMS Cell Therapy Division.
Okay.
Is he
And-
testifying as an expert witness?
well,
I'd like to answer the question.
Well,
which-
we got to find out whether or not you qualify as an expert or
he
not.
doesn't need to be qualified as an expert. He's just testifying as the person who's in charge of this operation and why we need the increased capacity. So that's not really expert testimony.
Thank you.
Yeah, not sure. So on the engineering side, we manage the facility and utility needs for manufacturing, for processing of the cell therapy process. So we have two products in the building today, both that are experiencing great growth and servicing our patients. So what our plan is now, we may have additional products come into the building. So maybe a third and or fourth product that may come into the building. So we want to have that LN2 capacity there. And then ultimately, once the new tanks are online, we'd like to take the older, smaller tanks out of service down the road, which would be the plan that we were looking for in a couple of years from now. So we wouldn't necessarily have all that capacity online for future.
Well, so that conflicts with the prior testimony that said that you'd probably keep the tanks in
We want to
service.
keep them in reserve, but we would like, we would find these
Yeah.
conditions, but as we testified last time, like to keep them in place. Obviously, because we don't want to come back here, not that we don't love meeting with you, but
Well, and to clarify, in the updated narrative, it says BMS is anticipating a 45% increase in production and processing. It doesn't say that you're already 45% above. Like, I feel like it's saying something different than what,
That's what we're trying to clarify.
right. On the paper,
So-
it says you're going to see a 45% increase. What you're saying is that you already have the 45% increase and that there's going to be additional products? Is that what's?
Short term, we're seeing an increase, for sure. Longer term, we're not sure of the capacity increase that we'll be seeing, but it's proposed to be, or it's anticipated to be, more than 45%, so we want the extra capacity there with the two new bulk tanks that we're looking to install.
Can the
That answer your
current
question?
facility that creates the product make enough product to use the full capacity, future capacity of the tanks without physical expansion of the plant?
We talked about addressing the other concern with the more frequent deliveries. So as we increase our manufacturing, we would need to, if we have just the smaller tanks in place, we would need to have more frequent deliveries. I think we talked about that last
I
time.
think, Stan, what the question is actually, is would we need to expand building S12 for our expanded
Okay.
product line?
No, we're not looking to expand the actual building.
No, I understand.
So we could stay
but
within our
in
existing suites.
that building, say you increase production, right? Would the would the max capacity of S12 ever require the full capacity, future capacity of the tanks that you're proposing today?
I don't think so. Based on what we know today, I don't think we would exceed the capacity required or provided by the two 9,000-gallon tanks.
But he's asking, the 6,000 gallon tanks plus the.
Oh, plus the
Right.
two 9,000.
Would we come up to the point where we use that capacity.
Unless you expand your current manufacturing plant.
It's difficult to say. We wouldn't I don't think we would exceed the capacity that we're asking for today, based on the ability of the building to manufacture within the 4 suites that we have. Because it would take, to your point, it would take an additional building expansion, building new suites, to have to use more capacity.
And I don't want something to get missed that I heard the witness say just now, and that I heard in the audio, the video from the prior meeting. That is, this added capacity also helps reduce the frequency of deliveries, which has major benefits for the surrounding neighborhoods in terms of trucks coming in and off. Is that correct?
That's part of the reasoning for putting these tanks in. So we don't want to limit ourselves with being caught short on deliveries. Right? We're delivering on average once a week. Now with the additional increase in manufacturing, we wouldn't want to go down to 2-3 days. We have more flexibility with the larger tanks, and I think we were talking about delivering between 14 and 21 days if we have the larger tanks in place.
And I think there was also testimony about possible supply chain problems that in case of production delays, getting the product to you, you'll have it on site in case there are delays.
Right, it's a real detriment to our process and serving our patients if we get caught short, not having the proper LN2 in place. We don't want to get down to the day or two level, like we want that capacity in place for at least a week out to ensure we have no issues manufacturing.
Thank you.
Don? So, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So if you were to put 2 of the 15-foot tanks in, right? I don't know if those are 4,500 each or what the capacity is on the 15-foot, but it sounds like that would exceed your current forecast of the 45%, still give you excess capacity, not have to put 30-foot tanks in. And even if you went to the 30-foot tanks, then there's a building expansion that would probably be required if you were to fully utilize all that capacity, plus the existing capacity you have.
Just to clarify, I don't think that's, I guess we're not being clear, and I apologize. We need the amount of capacity, the 18,000 gallons, plus our existing capacity to accommodate our future manufacturing.
I guess what I've heard is, right now, you're anticipating 45%, which you're saying that it's already there.
Yeah.
He's saying it's future need, right? Either way, if you even double that, you're still, with the 15-foot high tanks, you would still have more than enough storage and capacity, right? That would still solve for the frequency of deliveries, right?
You're saying if we just added 2,
15-foot tanks versus 30.
well, I don't know what 15, I don't know.
That might be the existing 3,000 gallon tanks each. Maybe that's what he's,
Yeah,
existing
those are
tanks.
3,000
Okay,
gallons.
got it.
Yeah, I just want to say, there's a lot of uncertainty in the manufacturing process. We do have very successful products that we're trying to, we do have, we were able to bring on more patients to treat more patients with the 2 processes that we have. And based on latest news with our competitors, like our product has an advantage. So more patients will be swaying our way with this cell therapy process. So it's very uncertain on exactly the % growth and exactly the amount of LN2 that we need. But we feel that with the 2 9,000 gallon tanks, that we'd have enough capacity. And then based on how the forecasts go over the next few years, there's ability to maybe not continue using the 3,000 gallon tanks because they're older. They're exceeding their end of their useful life as well. So we're putting new in place with the ability to take the older tanks out of service down the road. But I think when those come out of service, we'd have enough capacity with what's left, the 2 9,000 gallon tanks, if you understand.
When they come out of service, do they have an alternate use? They may not be good for this chemical, but are they good for something else?
We would not pursue them for anything else in our
So
facility.
they would be removed?
They would be removed if they get used somewhere else, a different site, different company. That'd be not in our area of responsibility, or we wouldn't follow the.
Okay,
path.
so could that be a condition that once they're those are out of service, they're removed from the premises? Would that make sense?
Yeah, the smaller tanks would be removed once we no
Yeah,
longer
we
have a need for
accept
that.
that as a condition. if the board
Would that
happens
make,
to grant it.
does that make sense to the folks bringing this up? Okay, can we put that one in there for now? Any other questions for this witness?
I have a
here.
question. Are you going to address, like, the possibility of, right now you have two 29-foot tanks instead of two 29, just, 4 smaller ones? Is that going to be addressed tonight?
Yes, that's my next witness.
Okay.
Yeah, that question came up in the last meeting.
Yes,
and
I just
we're
wanted
prepared
to-
answer
Okay, any other questions for this witness?
Yeah,
Any-
it's just,
Don?
maybe I'm being very simple with mathematics, but you're only getting 2 6,000-gallon deliveries a month. That's 12,000 gallons, right? That's what you're saying, two deliveries a month, 6,000 gallons
today. Today?
in the future. But if you get the new
It'll
tanks, you're gonna limit, your deliveries will drop down to 2 a month.
Initially.
6,000
Correct, initially.
So beyond that initial point, how many deliveries do you anticipate? To increase? Is it gonna be 3 a month, 4 a month, 5 a month? If you're increasing 45% now,
Yeah.
then you double it to 90, the delivery's gotta increase too.
It would double, think, the way we're planning. We wouldn't jump into the increased capacity right away. So it could be delivery instead of once a week, maybe once every 3 weeks. But as we ramp up, then it might go down to 2 weeks, but I don't see it being back to once a week, at least short to midterm. Longer term, like
Nobody. you
2
can't-
years out, we may have, we don't know what the
Sure.
capacity is gonna be.
So my point is, you're not filling the tanks to capacity with only 12,000 gallons, and so how does that work?
Maybe-
Using normal
I
gallons.
think the SME can maybe speak to that,
Okay.
because the truck comes in certain sizes, so one truckload, it is what it is. I don't know, I
Okay.
forgot the exact amount that's delivered at each time, but they can speak to that. Yeah, they have detailed testimony on that.
Perfect.
Okay, any other questions? for Mr.
Questions from our professionals?
I did have, well, I just wanted to clarify, I know maybe this isn't a question for you, but what was the date on that new narrative that you submitted?
That would have been, that's not Stan, so I
August
can
2nd.
answer that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
The letter accompanying it is August 2nd, August 2,
Yeah.
received August 5th.
Yeah.
If you want my copy, I'll give
I
it.
have an extra one, because I printed one, and there was one sitting on my desk here.
Okay, any other questions from the professionals?
Yep.
If not, any questions from the public for this witness only? I see none. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
can we, let's move on to the,
All
your
right, I'd
first
like to
witness.
call Mr. Ahmed Osman.
And if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Ahmad Osman, it's Osman.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background, experience, and qualifications if you're being qualified as an expert?
I'm a mechanical engineer, aeronautical designs, moved to Airgas like 6 years ago. Worked on the design part, now I'm the regional engineer for Airgas East.
Okay, and licensed in the state of New Jersey as an engineer?
Mechanical engineering is not.
Oh, okay.
We
Why not?
don't do the licenses like the site civils.
Okay. Any questions?
Okay, Mr. Osman, there was if you could just tell us the issues with the problems with using a multiple number of smaller tanks rather than the 2
Heat loss.
tanks that are proposed.
So heat loss, more piping to the internals of the tank. Now we're introducing more heat, more BTUs to the cryogenic liquid. Cryogenic liquid is like negative 320 when it's come to nitrogen. So the vacuum and the insulation around the 2 vessels is just heat, like fighting the weather outside. Yes, even if it's like negative 10 outside and the worst day ever we'll see, and in the fall, still, it just, that's a lot of heat. We are trying to eliminate the pathway to the internals of the tank. More piping, more pipes, that's mean more heat to go to that liquid nitrogen, and more heat to the liquid nitrogen, it will turn it to gas, and when it turns it to gas, we are losing that gas to the atmosphere. So you're taking the tank from maybe 75% efficiency to 45% efficiency, just by adding extra tank, extra tank, extra tank, more loss. The tank is not efficient.
And are the tanks viable to be placed underground?
No, by code, we are not allowed, and it's not even designed to be that way.
Now, with respect to the horizontally mounted tanks as opposed to the vertically mounted tanks, what are the disadvantages from an operational perspective of the horizontal tanks?
So the manufacturers, they have on their documents, you will see something called natural evaporation rate. That is the rate of the gas, actually, the cryogenic liquid turning to gas inside the vessel. So that is a glass of, that is alcohol. It will stay alcohol for a year. Maybe it will shrink. But for the liquid nitrogen, you give it 1 day, you will be losing a percentage to the gas. So, for example, we're starting with 100 gallons. We are going to lose 0.24% every day of that liquid to the atmosphere. So horizontal tanks are not efficient as the vertical tanks. The vertical tanks, now I will state the numbers. It's called NER, the natural evaporation rate for the short tanks. It's one of the best tanks we're using right now. Horizontal tanks is 0.24%, and vertical tanks is 0.16%. Of course, when you put that on like across the board for a whole year, numbers make difference. Again, that's just a lot of waste of money since that it's not a code requirement with the horizontal tank.
And also, how long would it take if we have to go with the horizontal tank, since we hadn't planned to, since we have the vertical tanks for BMS to be able to get them?
At least 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you. That's 40 weeks. And then lastly, at our last meeting, the board had a concern about the diesel tank, which is located approximately 39 feet from the proposed location of liquid and nitrogen tanks. Are there any safety issues with respect to that?
No, and there is nothing in the NFPA 55 version 2020, anything regarding nitrogen and diesel tanks.
And what is NFPA 55 for the board?
That is the National Fire
Protection.
Agency.
That concludes Mr. Osmond's direct testimony. I know the board had some questions, and he is here to answer them.
All right, let's start with our professionals. Anything from either of you?
Nothing. Questions?
Okay, then for the board members?
Yes. If you want, maybe you can elaborate a little bit about fire protection from lightning.
Okay, lighting fine. Okay, there is a lighting calculator I have to use as a design authority, like bending, to make sure that there is no lighting problem.
Lightning.
Lightning, like
Yes.
thunder. The thunder, yes, yes. And if there is might be a possibility,
Yeah.
I will require grounding to the tanks.
For the
By code.
30-foot tall tanks.
Yes, the tank will be grounded to the
Just the
ground.
grounding, so the body of the tank will act as
Yes.
a lightning rod.
Yes, the tank itself, it can handle, and the legs has like a copper duct to be
Thank you.
connected to the ground.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had a question. Did you say that the loss per tank was, if they're vertical, it was 0.16% per day?
Vertical, yes.
Okay. So over the course of a year, if you have 18,000 gallons of storage, you'll lose 10,500 gallons of liquid nitrogen over the course of a year from basically 0.16% a day out of 18,000 gallons.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I didn't do the calculation that way, but I have trust the math, yes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, which maybe one or both of you can answer. If not, maybe another witness can. I think I know the answers from listening to the video and hearing testimony. But so the vertical tanks, they are shorter than the building they're next to, correct?
Correct.
How many feet?
29 versus 35.
So 6 feet. And you're going to paint them the same color as the
Yes,
building?
that'll be in our next witness.
Okay.
testimony.
And I heard you also say there's going to be plantings,
Right, that's, Mr. McCabe's going to address all of the screening and height.
because the tank, when I went there, the tanks, I can't imagine, it would be easy to see the tanks even without that, just from walking the backyards there, but I
You're
just
correct.
just want to make sure that I understood everything else correctly.
Any other questions for
Yeah,
this
just,
witness?
yeah.
Don?
The diesel tank, is that above ground or under?
Up above.
Is there a dike around it? Yeah, so it's not going to impinge on these tanks if it spills? It'll be very hard for it to go underneath, and, I mean, diesel's very hard to ignite anyway, but it's not going to impinge on these tanks
No.
if the tank ruptures or something like that?
Project we did with that containment around diesel
Yeah.
tanks. Last year.
Any other questions for Mr. Osmond?
What I'm asking.
Just one more. Were it not, if it were not a 40-week delay to get the horizontal and to stick within the 15-foot variance, would you consider that to be a better option without having to ask for a variance?
Talking about,
Vertical
With-
versus horizontal, which would, if all things were equal, right? If all things were equal, which is better?
I would pick vertical still.
Right, what I'm saying is, how high is a vertical, is a horizontal tank?
Yeah, it's maybe, if it's same size, most likely it's 8 foot 6 inches, maybe plus or minus 2 feet, depend on the
It
zone.
would require a variance then, it sounds like.
It would not.
Right, okay.
Well, it still would require the use variance. They all require the use variance. It
Understood.
just wouldn't require the height variance.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? I don't see any. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can we
Thank
go to
I'd
you?
like to call my next witness, Mr. Peter McCabe. Whatever's easy, better for you. You're going to need to take this mic with you.
No, he can use the one right there.
That works.
That will not carry to.
Okay.
But first, Mr. McCabe, can you give your?
Let me
Oh,
swear
swear
in
him in
first.
first.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Is this on?
Should show green.
It's not. I can say it. Okay. Engineers and attorneys get along.
Or if you feel more comfortable, you can sit.
This is dead, guys.
Again.
Yeah.
Can you just spell your last name for the record?
McCabe, M-C-C-A-B-E.
Thank you. And can you briefly describe your background, experience, and qualifications for the board?
Yes, I have a degree in civil engineering from Rutgers University. I've been practicing civil engineering for over 30 years, and I'm a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, in good standing.
I'd like to offer Mr. McCabe as an expert in the field of civil engineering.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
We will accept your credentials and turn you over to your attorney.
Mr. McCabe, could you just I guess we'll reorient and remind the board and some members, I'm gathering, just listen to tapes, where the proposed tanks are, and then we'll go through the various views.
Certainly. And what I'd like to do is mark my first exhibit as A9.
A9, right. And that is called BMS Summit N2 Expansion Landscape Plan, sheet LP 101, prepared by Michael Surza, SZURA, dated 08/05/2024.
So what this exhibit shows is, it's a partial plan of the site. On the left is the dark line that you see is the property line of BMS, and the residences are beyond that to the left of the page. I'm going to try and get closer with that microphone so I can point to a couple.
Yeah, just drag that microphone over to the edge.
You can use that one.
We can use all kinds of mics. You name it, we got them.
Okay. So I hate to put my back to part of the audience, including Quentin in the back row, but this is the location of the tanks that have been discussed. Testimony was provided by Mr. Sarati in terms of the site improvements, but that's where the two 29-foot tall nitrogen tanks are proposed. This is the existing building in the background, so to speak, when we consider the perspective from the property line. What I would like to point out here is that there's two islands, this larger triangular shape and then a kind of a peninsula at the top of the page. And in both of those locations, there's existing vegetation. You'll see that in the photo that I'm going to present. But we determined that there was an ability to excuse me, put 12 large arborvitae on this peninsula and then another 26 large arborvitae in this peninsula. And what we're proposing is to install them 8 to 10 feet tall, roughly 6 to 7 feet on center, and 8 to foot tall at planting. So I think what I'm going to do next is introduce the next exhibit, which is an existing photograph.
And that will be Exhibit A10, which is called BMS Summit N2 Expansion View 2 Existing Conditions prepared by Langdon Engineering and Environmental Services, LLC, dated 05 August 2024.
This microphone. So, what this, I'm standing right in front of it. So. What I wanted to do for the board real quick was to just point out on this plan, Exhibit A9, where this next photograph is taken from. So there's a red X, which I'm going to point to. And the location of this is roughly 180 feet from the proposed tanks. Behind where the perspective of this photo is taken, there's close to 150 foot of buffer tree growth and a fence and a row of arborvitae that's been recently planted by BMS. Here's the property line. The distance from the property line to the to the tanks is 350 feet, give or take. So that's the perspective of where this photograph is taken from.
So it'll look it'll be far less of a view of the tanks from the actual neighbor's property lines, correct, Mr. McCabe?
Right, so Exhibit A10 is taken from the parking lot with 150 feet of woods, generally deciduous wood, some evergreen, but there has been a row of arborvitae along the fence that's been planted. So photos that we took from those properties in the spring when there was leaves, you couldn't see anything. So we didn't do a perspective from there. We did a perspective from the parking lot. So what you're seeing here is the building and the existing tanks. So the next exhibit.
And that is Exhibit A11, and that is the view of the addition, it's called BMS Summit N2 Expansion View 2, after installation, also prepared by Langdon Engineering and Environmental Services, LLC, and also dated 05 August 2024.
Correct. So all that was done to this photograph is a rendering of the proposed tanks painted. And from this perspective, you're only going to see roughly the outline of one of the tanks because they're one behind the other from this area. But you can see at the center of this photograph, what's shown is a dashed white line giving the outline of the tank. And you can see the color matching. Again, it's software, so it's not entirely precise, but you can see that the silhouette of the tank is pretty difficult to see. But again, I mentioned that we're proposing a significant amount from this perspective. You're going to see in this next exhibit what the 8 to 10 foot arborvitae are going to do to this view shed or to this perspective. So this will be Exhibit A12.
Right, and that is entitled BMS Summit N2 Expansion View 2 after installation with evergreens, also prepared by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services LLC, and also dated August 2024.
Correct. So Exhibit A12, like I described, has the arborvitae superimposed as a rendering at planting. So these are 8 to 10 foot arborvitae. And again, it's a perspective, so this is, the building's 35 feet in the distance. The tanks, the outline of it from this perspective, although it's 29 feet, looks taller than the building. But again, the arborvitae being in front, at 8 to 10 foot, you're not going to see the tanks.
Okay, and now can you show the board what it would look like after 5 years of growth?
Sure.
And this would be Exhibit A12.
A13.
A13, I apologize. And it's entitled BMS Summit N2 Expansion View 2, 5 years installation with evergreen trees prepared by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services LLC, also dated 05 August 2024.
So again, this is the planted arborvitaes 5 years after install. And you can see the impact of 5 years of growth. They're fast-growing trees. This again is the outlet of the outline of the nitrogen tanks.
And that concludes Mr. McCabe's direct testimony. He's obviously here to answer questions.
Our professionals first.
I do not have any questions.
I have a few questions. What type of software was used to do the simulations in order for the accuracy to be displayed?
That's a good question. I'm going to turn to my assistant staff member. Do you know what our landscape department uses? Photoshop.
So it was Photoshop, and there was reference items for you to then take the proper measurements?
Yes.
And simulate those?
Yes. It was.
What date was that photograph?
The photograph was April 15th.
So the trees
Taken by Ashley Bertinger, who's in the office.
Okay, so the trees were just coming into leaf, or those are, if you can, excuse me, I can't
Yes,
see, but
sure.
certain trees, or the trees that you're seeing in the background?
Yes.
They're
They're coming
trees
into,
that just
yes,
coming into leaf. Okay.
correct.
Is there irrigation where the landscaping is being proposed? Do we know?
I don't know that
Can that
that
be
answer.
provided?
You can, I mean, we could easily make sure it's installed. I don't know if it exists today, but we can make sure it's installed.
All right, he needs a microphone one way or the other.
Can
We can't hear him.
if we're correct? Okay, Stan, and he's already sworn in.
Right.
So based on the question, if we can provide irrigation if required, I guess to ensure the trees grow well over the years and not starve for water.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions?
Anything else? You have, okay, I'm sorry, yes. Any board members?
I just have a quick one. So this row of trees, is that the first group on that island before the driveway? Or is it the second group? You follow what I'm saying? If you go back to the first page.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, the 12 or the.
That's a good question, yeah. Yeah, this is not the full extent, what you're looking at is not the full extent of the arborvitae.
Yeah.
38. So you're looking at this
Okay.
grouping here.
That's right, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot about the red X, yeah.
So
Very good.
you don't see the stagger that well, but there's some staggering
Okay.
that's shown. That exists.
Questions from the board? None? Okay. Questions from the public? None?
All right, I will now call my final witness, Mr. James Kyle, who is he's our professional planner, and he was previously sworn and qualified at the last meeting.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I just want to kind of sum up where we're at relative to the variance criteria. So we heard the concerns, we went back, did the research. I think what we learned tonight is the difference between the horizontal and the vertical there is an efficiency loss that is significant enough that for BMS, they would prefer to go with the vertical design. So when we got to that point, we spent a significant amount of time trying to come up with a solution to address the visual concerns that were presented at the meeting in June. So I think what we've come up with here is that the painting of the tank, and this was a point that I made in my testimony in June, the building is really the backdrop to these tanks as viewed from the west side of the property. We have about, as Mr. McCabe noted, 350 feet from the property line to the tanks. That's the property line of the residential uses to the west along Passaic. So the painting of that tank will effectively increase, or rather decrease, visibility even further as a backdrop. So we can color match to that lower portion of the building. It will essentially help that tank blend in with the building behind it, which is taller. The secondary step of adding the arborvitae, we have enough room in those landscape beds that we can put those trees in. I'm sure you've all seen these trees. They grow incredibly quickly. It's not uncommon after the first year they're installed that you get 2 or more feet of growth per year. If they're irrigated, it'll probably be even more. What's not reflected here as well is the width. At 6 to 7 feet on center in a staggered configuration, that will be a solid evergreen wall probably within 3 years. So we'll essentially have 2 levels of protection to the views from the west. Painting of the tank to match the building as a backdrop, and then the evergreens that will effectively eliminate all view from the west. And there is a little driveway opening that is there. It's not significant enough that it's going to open up that view shed dramatically. So we think this really addresses the visual concerns that we heard. It does make the vertical tanks a viable option, as we've heard tonight. That's a better option from an efficiency perspective. And thinking back to the variance criteria, particularly on the height, because I don't think the use was necessarily the issue. It was really the visual of the increased height that we were requesting. Here we feel strongly that this kind of underscores the fact that the benefits of the vertical tank outweigh the potential detriments here, which would be the visual impact, because we've essentially proposed mitigation that will effectively eliminate that concern almost entirely. So I think here the benefits do outweigh the detriments on the C2 analysis that would prevail. I think that's all I had to say, so I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Or if Mr. Moore has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. No, you covered it.
Okay.
Professionals? Questions?
No questions.
Board members?
Just a real quick one. Are there any alarms required on these tanks in case there's a leak, so that if there's any
I'll go
humans
to
around?
Mr. Osmond on that.
So we have a telemetry unit installed on the tanks. We forecast the usage. That's one. That's the first defense. And the second thing will be a telemetry unit wired to the inside of the facility. They will be monitoring the level and the pressure of the tank.
Is there a proximity alarm to the tanks so that the people parking in the parking lot, if there's a leak, they're not overcome by the?
It's open to the
Asphyxiation?
atmosphere. It's not.
So there's no risk of asphyxiation
Yeah,
from a leak?
it's not confined space. It's not a courtyard.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's open to the atmosphere, you can just walk through the cloud, no problem.
Any other questions from the board members? Any questions from the public?
When do I get my application heard? That's the questions from the public.
I see nothing from the public, so I would say it's up to you for any closing.
I have, that concludes our direct testimony. I think we have met the requisite variance criteria, and I would urge the board to vote for these variances and site plan approval.
Okay,
Just reminder, we should open it to comments from the public as well.
that's where I was going. Public for comments, we will swear you in if you wish to make any comment, positive or negative, about this case. I don't see anyone jumping towards the microphone, so we will now hear from our attorney the conditions as well as the number of votes required.
Yep, so since this is D variances involved, it will require 5 votes to approve. I have two conditions that were noted. First is our usual compliance with the conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum with the exceptions noted from council in his introduction. And second is that upon the decommissioning of the existing, and correct me if I'm wrong on the figure here, but 6,000 gallons of capacity existing? Okay.
Yes, that's correct, Mr.
Those,
Ball.
those tanks will be removed from the site.
And it takes 5 votes.
Yes.
Okay, who wants to kick it
Can
off?
you, I'm sorry, can you clarify that last condition?
Upon the decommissioning of the existing 6,000 capacity, 6,000 gallons of capacity of storage, those tanks will be removed from the site. So just, it won't be repurposed, won't be used elsewhere.
But decommissioning is open because they could be left empty for any amount of time, so just want to, okay.
Is there a better,
Well, no, I'm just thinking,
is there
they're not,
better
I just,
terminology
they're
that
not
would
going to be decommissioned with the tanks that are being installed. Like typically, you would decommission a tank when you're putting in a new tank, but
Right.
this is not, so.
Well, what's the right language for what we're talking about, which means if they're not using them anymore, they're taking them away?
Well, I think that's the part that's sort of an unknown in this decommissioning statement, is that there's basically an unknown, no
Well,
expiration for when.
When they are decommissioned, meaning not used anymore, we will take them away.
I think you also have to have those tanks tested every so often, I would assume, to hold the pressure, you have to meet certain requirements, right? Isn't there a lifespan for these tanks? You said that,
There's a
right?
lifespan, I'm not sure of the testing requirements.
Okay.
You need a microphone.
Sorry to do this.
You're not supposed to talk, but we need a microphone. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Can you please repeat the question? Repeat the question, please.
The question, repeat the question.
There's a lifespan for these tanks, these cylinders, right?
It's
So
bulk
20 years,
tanks?
30
Is it
years?
bulk tanks?
The smaller.
The 3,000
6,000
gallons.
gallon?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is no lifespan. We have tanks since 1960 in the field. Okay, it need to be maintained. It has to follow all of national board, American National Board, the SME, and NFPA requirements.
Mhm.
The second the tank is out of compliance, it has to be scrapped. Even if the documents for the tank is lost, the data plate on it, if it's lost, that's a scrap tank. It has to be retested by ASME and the
Right,
national board
that's where I was
results.
going, yeah.
So, yes, and that information should be like with the birth certificate of the tank from whatever how old it is.
Okay. So it doesn't
Okay,
resolve.
thank you.
That doesn't resolve your
Because the
problem.
intent is to have the tanks empty on site with the use, and in place of that, use the 9,000 gallon tanks. But empty doesn't mean, just because they're empty doesn't mean they're going to be decommissioned. I guess that's just so I just don't know what the decommissioning criteria, how that helps.
It sounds like decommissioned and removed, right? That's what you're agreeing to?
Yeah, when
Not
they-
upon,
when
but
they are-
upon installation of the 9,000 gallon
No.
tanks? No,
No.
yeah.
If they're not using these, what I was trying to get to is when these tanks are no longer used, that you're now only using the bigger tanks, they go away.
But within the.
And I don't know how to express that.
Then they
that
should be
makes everybody
decommissioned,
happy.
then they should be decommissioned upon installation of the 9,000
Well, no,
gallon
that's
tanks. Like
different
that's-
than not
Right,
using them.
Right.
well,
They
the
did
testimony
testif-
was that they're not going to
No,
be used.
they've
No, they-
indicated that they do have a reason to be using both at a time, at some time. But there may be some time that they decide they're not going to do that. And then when they do that, they go bye-bye.
Can we put a stipulation in, is when they stop being used within 3 months, 6 months, they must be decommissioned and removed? So that there's actually a time frame on that? So it's just not sitting?
Within 2 years, we would agree to decommission and remove them within 2 years of installation of the new tanks.
Okay. That's a little more, that's clear. Yeah.
You're happy?
I would just say, I think it's more clear.
That
Yeah.
would work, okay. Can you add that as a condition?
Absolutely.
Okay. Back to the plants and the height and paint. Any other comments that anybody wants to make about the application?
Does the conditions say the plants, does it say also the irrigation?
Yeah. Irrigation
it's-
is a condition, and then it would be planting as provided in exhibits Be A12.
Okay.
And also Exhibit A9, which is the actual plan for planting.
So we've added the,
Yeah, and so
another condition.
a third condition will be that plantings will be provided in accordance with the testimony and with A9 and A12, and that irrigation will be provided as necessary.
Any other comments that people would like to discuss?
Is this executive session, or is this
This is
for the
executive,
condition?
we're
Okay,
totally
I'm
in
just-
executive
yeah.
session, but we've blown all the things out of the water here.
Okay.
So, yes, sir. Mr. Vice Chair,
Thank
bring
you,
us,
Mr. Chairman.
bring us back to order, will you?
I want to thank this applicant for hearing the board the last time and clearly doing a thorough investigation to storage alternates. I have to say, I don't really find the results of that convincing, but what I do find very convincing are these renderings of the landscape. Kind of wish you had come here in the first place with that, probably would have saved us all some time. But this is clearly going to be very well screened, and that was my major concern, is the visibility for the neighbors or anyone passing by. And so with this change to your landscape design, I can support this application.
Someone from this side? Go ahead.
Again, appreciate the work that was done in going back and looking at alternatives. And I think it addresses the visibility concerns I had. The other is asking for a variance when there's perfectly reasonable alternative to not need a variance. I kind of get stuck on that a little bit. I know it's a 40-week delay. I know there's some things there. You're investing a bunch of money to mitigate that. So, you know, I don't think there's necessarily support for a variance. So I'm still a little torn on this, because I do think, you know, had you just come in and put it horizontal, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
To answer your question, there's a long delay here. This application was put in February.
Well,
Think of how many, if you'd ordered the tanks, how close would they be?
well, that's,
I don't have the answer to that. But I do, I'm going to say what I think right now. I think that I always seem to be on the side of medical arts and getting people what they need when they need it. And this, even the loss of 1% of the ability to treat a patient somewhere who needs it goes very far on the positive side for me. You add to that the fact that the potential for one of these trucks to spring a leak on River Road or do whatever, you know, have a driver who doesn't know what he's doing on Route 24 and 78 where they flip over all the time. And Don, you've done a number of those as a
Luckily, it's
fire-
never been an air gas vehicle. So.
you know, okay. But it's still, I put that on the side of
No, for
public
sure.
safety, taking care of our community, taking care of our first responders, and just going ahead and making sure that all of these people are protected and are taken care of. And so therefore, I would entertain a motion to approve this variance. Is there a-
I just
Want
have some
people
things
comment?
I would
Anybody
say.
else want to say something?
Yes.
Please.
I think, go ahead, you're.
No, I can very easily support this application. I think I had no visibility concerns before you added the screening and the plantings, or I should say I had limited concerns, because I had a hard time seeing it from the backyards. One of the property owners let me go back there and look, and I had a hard time seeing it now without the screening, but with the added screening, it's going to be virtually invisible. I think you made a convincing argument why the vertical is better than horizontal. It may not be 100% convincing, but I think you've made a good enough case, combined with the fact of hiding the tanks, and it's lower than the building. I could support the height variance too. I'm very, very strongly convinced of the positive impacts of having excess capacity, maybe in some sense, in order to reduce deliveries for some of the reasons that Mr. Steiner just mentioned. And I see no substantial detriment to the public good in approving this variance, and I see a lot of public benefit, as Joe alluded to, with the increasing their capacity to make cancer drugs. I'm not sure how that applies to granting zoning variances, but it's certainly a positive factor for helping them do their work. So I can strongly support this application.
I obviously, we're all here hoping, somebody finds cures for all cancers, so it's not about that. I think that one thing that needs to be said is that while the number of deliveries might be reduced, more trucks will be coming, right, to fill 9,000 gallon tanks. If the trucks are 6,000 gallons capacity each, you're going to have more trucks. So it's not less truck traffic, it's just maybe twice a month you have 2 trucks or 3 trucks instead of 1 truck every 7 to 10 days now. And then maybe if you didn't have these tanks, I think that just needs to be said, because I'm not convinced about the benefit from the reduced traffic. That one just doesn't resonate with me. The other thing that I do find a little bit challenging is that the capacity is so much greater than what is, what has been testified to the need for, and even, doubling the potential need. It's now if you decommission the other tanks, instead of having 400% of present capacity, including the current tanks, it'll be 300% in 2 years. That's one that I'm sort of struggling with, I have to admit, because I think that case almost, if that happens, if right now you're anticipating an increased 45% production, and you want to increase your storage by 100% to give yourselves a buffer, I understand that, but increasing the storage by another 200%, that's more than, I almost feel like you just need to come in for another tank at that point when you need it, when you think, oh, we're developing a new drug, we're gonna need more nitrogen. That's something I'm struggling with. It's just the capacity of it, because we don't allow above-ground storage tanks. So if you're going to have an above-ground storage tank, I feel like your use really needs to be justified. The complete use, the size of the tank needs to be justified. So for me, I would prefer to see those tanks be smaller, maybe not 29 feet, maybe 20 feet, something that is more in line with giving yourself 100% room for 100% increase in production as opposed to 45%, but not another 200%.
I'm ready to second.
I'll move to approve with the conditions stated earlier.
Any other comments before I do this again and not get, is anybody on this end?
So my concerns are similar to Ms. Zahn's. It's more, I could not see the tanks at all from the road, so the screening was not an issue with me. It's just the size of two 29-foot tanks. And I don't think, unless I missed something, I never heard any explanation on why we couldn't do 4 smaller tanks. It's never.
Oh, we did, if you need us to reiterate that, but
No,
Mr.
yeah,
Osmond
sorry,
testified
sir, I'm sorry, we're in executive session.
Okay.
We're going to stay in it. Please go ahead.
So if anyone, I don't know if I missed that, why there couldn't have been smaller
It's
tanks.
heat loss among
It's
the
more
tanks.
piping.
Oh, yes, okay, yes, but that wasn't just the horizontal tanks. That was the
Right,
same thing for
right.
each individual one also. Okay.
Any other comments from them? Is there a motion?
So moved to approve with the conditions as stated.
I'll second it.
May we have a roll call vote?
Sure.
And it requires 5 affirmative votes.
Yes. Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Zahn?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
No.
Mr. Malay?
No?
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we will be back here at 1:15 with the next case up being 61 Woodland Avenue.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you begin by telling us what your application is about, and what you're hoping to accomplish, and then I'm assuming you'll turn it over to your architect who will carry the heavy water for you.
Absolutely. We moved to 61 Woodland Avenue in April of last year. And since we've lived there, we've noticed that the deck in the rear of our home is in somewhat disrepair. In fact, recently, some of the boards have broken on the deck, and the finish clearly is deteriorating. And so we've decided it's time to replace the deck to keep it good.
Okay. Any questions from Marie for the?
No.
Okay. Any questions from the board members? Oh, and I should note for the record that Ms. Zahn is recused herself from this particular case. Any questions for the applicants from this side? No? Okay. And I'm assuming you wish to turn it over to.
Mr. Conway?
Okay.
All right.
We are going to swear you in.
Do you swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Thomas Conway, Conway.
Thank you, and I know you've appeared before us a number of times. Any changes to your credentials since the last time you were here?
Nope, I'm just older.
That's fair enough. I imagine the board would like to accept you once again.
Yeah, we'll bring them back.
Just to start this off, just to avoid too much confusion, we had, they mentioned this, we had been in for this project previously for the previous owners, which were Steve and Melissa Spur, and we had designed an addition off the back.
Do I have to go bye-bye?
Is that, what?
Hang on one second.
It's fine.
That's okay. Okay.
Is that okay, or was that too much?
No, it's good.
Okay.
All
A
of us
previous-
have the same conflict, so.
Okay, so a previous owner that decided not to do their project, so we got approvals for that work. And then they moved next door because the woman that was living there sold their house, and they decided that they wanted to renovate that one, and then they could keep their own house, and then they sold to the current owner. So it's a little confusing because we have a previous approved variance on, but not on this project. So we're doing a proposed much smaller scope of work on this house. And we're just suggesting to replace the deck in the back, and also to upgrade some of the hardscape front walkway and the back walk, adding a little bit of a back walkway as well while we're doing that work. We're also doing a little bit of work along the side of the house to prep for connection to the basement, which they're also eventually going to be renovating. But that's all inside, and that doesn't require any variances. So the house.
Excuse me, before you go too far. So there's already a previous variance approved on this?
It was, but it's expired.
So it's expired, okay.
Yes, just, sorry.
Gotcha.
I just didn't want to confuse anybody. I don't know how many people were here then. I don't know whether any of you were. I did a good job. So the property along Woodland, my historic preservation background always kind of looks towards, the context and the pattern of development. These sites along this stretch and also up on Shady Side are underscaled for the zone, and a number of them in that neighborhood. So that was, that's really the issue we're mostly having on this. So the property is zoned for R10, and they only have a 7,234 square feet on their current property. The variances we're requesting are a proposed, the existing lot, it's for both lot coverage and building coverage. The existing lot coverage is 52.83%, where the maximum is allowed is 35%. We're proposing a 52.64%, which is a slight decrease. And we're also, for building coverage, we are also requesting for a proposal of 28.95%, where there's a maximum allowed of 18%, and the existing is 29.03. That is also a slight decrease. We are also, of note, the side yard setbacks were also increasing and making them more, making them also compliant, just to bring them closer to what's desirable. I'll just like point it out. So, the existing deck currently connects from the house and actually down to the drive, and it's actually very, very tight the way it's developed there along the edge of the property, along the edge of the garage and the house. So what we proposed is to kind of open that up a little bit more, reconfigure the deck, so the deck actually, rather connecting from the house to the driveway, it connects from the house to the garden or the backyard. And this reconfiguration is more contextual. It opens up the light and air into the lower level as well, and it just makes the layout a lot more desirable. So currently, it feels very awkward the way it's laid out, and this makes it a lot nicer where you have a more central element there, and it more aligns with the architecture of the house and gives more of a symmetry to the house with the rhythm of the front of the house. We are also looking to renovate, this doesn't require variance, but we're just going to be renovating the existing porch up front, and we're also going to be doing some siding upgrades as well. The stucco has deteriorated, and it's been changed over time, so it's very coarse. So we're looking to go to match that with wood siding along the lower band of the house. And then we're also looking at the new design for the deck. We would be doing a louver plan on both the front and the back, rather than lattice, which is harder to maintain and keep looking sharp. And we think this is an attractive upgrade. It doesn't have any negative detriment to the neighborhood, and it's in keeping with the neighborhood and the historic integrity of the house and the properties around it.
Okay, questions?
So it doesn't appear that they're increasing the impervious coverage or changing the grading in any appreciable way. So I don't feel like there's any engineering comments. We don't have any problems with this application.
Okay. Questions from board members?
Wish I could say I had some, I don't.
This side? Questions from the public? Seeing none. Does anybody wish to tell us in the public what they think of this application? This is going quick. Okay. Is there anything that you would like as the applicants to say to the board and close it?
Just that, we just want to say we appreciate your time and for allowing us to come before you to give us our plans. Thank you very much.
Okay, who wants to, conditions and number of votes?
Yep, so just our usual condition of compliance with those, oh wait, was there a engineering memo?
No.
So then no conditions. The number of votes required are 4, since only C variances are involved, it's a simple majority vote.
Okay. Who wants to start executive session? Mr. Vice Chairman.
I think Mr. Conway explained it perfectly. Undersized lot. This is completely concealed from public view. Positive criteria is obviously improving the safety and usability of the deck. They're improving the layout. This is very straightforward for me, and I can support this application.
And the only thing I'd add is the variances they're asking for, they're actually making them lesser variances,
yeah.
so that's.
Great point.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing I maybe wanted to ask, I'll just comment about, the Forester's notes the lack of screening, but also says he doesn't really see any room for screening. And I'm no expert on screening. I'm going to assume he's right. I took a quick look. I kind of see what he means, but, you know, I'm not asking for a condition, but if the applicant has any imaginative ideas for screening, feel free to try to do that.
Well, we are by pulling, as I mentioned, the left-hand side of the deck back a bit, we plan on having a planted area there, which we don't have now, so that
Okay, I
that
missed
would
that.
kind of give
Okay.
us softer.
I'm trying to keep executive session
I apologize.
without going back to the applicants, if we can.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, it looks like we have a very simple application here that I'm not even sure would be here if this were a regular-sized lot, but anyway, the answer is that I can't see anything that would prevent us from moving ahead on this. It's an easy one to support. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to
Second.
May we have a roll call vote?
Vice Chairman Loiketz.
Yes.
Mr. Yuko.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Kieran.
Yes.
Mr. Malay.
yes.
Ms. Chifo.
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Again, look at your resolution, well, with them, I'm not worried. Make sure that when you get the resolution, you follow what's in there or ask questions as needed.
Did we time that?
What?
Is that some sort of record?
We're getting close. They said they could do it in 15 minutes, and they did it. Ms. Zahn's going to join us back. Thank you. For the record, do that. And we're ready to go to 25 Plymouth Road, Christopher and Lisa Varelli.
I have two of them.
Okay, here comes your expert. And we will begin by swearing the two of you in. You're going to follow the same mode. You can do your vote.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And please, one at a time, state your name, spell your last name.
Lisa Varelli, and last name is Virelli.
Chris Burley, V is Victor, Irelli.
Thank you.
Okay, could you give us an idea of what your project entails and what the variances are? And then I'm assuming you will be relying on your expert witness to
Yes.
give us all the details.
We've lived at the house for 7 years now, and we have 2 children that are in the middle school. And our house is older, like around 1940. There's no closet at all on the first floor. I don't know what happened to it, or I don't know if there ever was one. I assume there was, but there isn't now. So we have nowhere to hang coats or really put any of the children's sporting equipment and gear. We also have a dog. And we've noticed as the years go on and the more things they get involved with, it just explodes through the kitchen and all over the house. So we've sort of had a makeshift mudroom in the garage. And we spent, we called Steve a couple of years ago to see like what we could do, and we wanted to think about it some more, make sure it's what we really needed and wanted. And then we came up with a plan to bump the garage back, I think it's 12 feet, I'll leave the exact measurements to Steve, and make an official mudroom inside the house, and then add a pantry and sort of just rejigger that first floor so it's more functional for us. And we thought for resale in the future, it would also be good for future owners if they would like it. So it seemed to make sense. And then while we were doing the bump back, our master bedroom is pretty small and sort of has an odd layout. So we wanted to improve that and take the 12 feet that we're going to sort of make the room bigger, more functional, and separate the sleeping area from the bathroom area. And we came by Steve Majewski by way of a couple of friends who have used him in the past and really liked his work. And we've enjoyed working with him. So I will turn over the, or I guess, I can
Okay?
do that.
And you get a chance to add a word if you want.
Me?
Yes.
She did a wonderful job. I could only scoot up. No, she said everything that we wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
No, I do not.
Okay, any questions from the board? The public? Okay, I gather you're going to turn it over to your expert, and we'll move from there.
Yes, this is Steve Majewski.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
My name's Stephen Majewski with a PH, Majewski, M-A-J-E-W-S-K-I.
Thank you, and I believe you've appeared before us relatively recently?
Yes,
Any-
3 times in 2021, in April 2022, and I was accepted as an expert witness at that time.
Any changes
And
to your
I still have
credentials?
my license, current, state of New Jersey.
All right, any questions from the board, or would you like to accept him once again?
See any questions? Please accept, we accept your credentials and ask you to move forward.
Thank you. As Lisa Verrilli stated, they came to me and gave me the program that she outlined pretty good, and I may look at the present conditions and give a few little extra explanations on them. As always, when I come before, well, I wasn't planning to come to the board, but as always, when I get a program initially, I review the zoning compliance. So they gave me the survey, and I discovered 3 things immediately. The lot is undersized. It's only about 70%. It's 10,500 versus 15,000 in the R15 zone. It's also under width by 15 feet. It's only 75 feet versus 90. And also, it's an unusual through lot where it's on 2 streets, Plymouth and Ashland. So I was already presented with conditions that would make it a little bit difficult to design a project, and that might be in compliance, that I had to be more sensitive to land development ordinances when I approached designing the project. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the present conditions. That was out. I'm a little lopsided here, I'm sorry. So you have these sheets as part of your packet. On the first sheet of present conditions, which is your 4th sheet in the packet, I show the elevations that are significant, the 2 side elevations, and the elevation that faces Ashland Road, which is where the garage doors face. On the present conditions, I put a little outline of the proposed so it could be understood. Now, Mrs. Verrilli addressed the interior design, and she listed some of the challenges, which I also agreed with. And there is a dimension missing on your present conditions. That one of the sides of the depth of the existing garage is only 16 feet. And many SUVs and family-type cars are only a full 16 feet at this point or larger. So that side of the garage is very deficient. They do use the back of the garage as a mud area. As was stated, there is no mudroom for this house. You could come in the side and enter direct to the kitchen, and there's also no hall closet. If you look at your present conditions, you can see that. So one of the challenges was to try to give the family a mudroom with children, especially children that have a lot of sports these days compared to other times, and that was one of our challenges, to make the garage deeper and also to provide a mudroom space. If you look at the second floor, you'll see that the master bedroom, primary bedroom, has a little funny kick in it. It's a little difficult to arrange furniture. The bathroom door essentially is right on the bedroom, and it's hard to arrange furniture around looking direct into the bathroom. The bathroom is also not ideal. The toilet is across from the sinks. It restricts use of the sinks. And so that was part of the challenge that I was presented with in order to move forward with a design for this project. So when I designed the project, I try to keep the architecture in keeping with the existing architecture that's there. I use the same materials, the wood shingles. I essentially only made a small section taller than it was in order to achieve proper ceiling height in the bedroom. The bedroom's only 7.5 feet tall now, so we went to basic 8 feet, no taller than that, at the end walls. And that was a little bit taller than that existing wing, which you could see in the proposed plans you have. But yet the existing house is actually a tiny bit taller than that. But the existing house is only 26.5 feet tall, far below the 35 feet allowed in the zone. So it's not a tall house by any means, but it's a beautiful house. It's contributing in the neighborhood. It's a standard colonial, 1947. It's a very nice house for the neighborhood, and I could see why they would want to add to this house in a reasonable way to bring it up to new standards, because the rooms aren't really huge. They're not very big. So I designed an addition that was about the right size that could give them the functions they needed on the inside. If you look at the street facade, it essentially looks the same as faces Ashland now, the through lot side of the street. But I added at the garage door a little small pent roof. It was an architectural detail that's nice. It keeps the same shape that was existing now, but it just comes forward, backward towards the street, which I consider the rear yard. If you look at the side that faces the closer neighbor, all we're doing that we're asking for, one of the variances, is to extend a small entrance porch to get into the kitchen that's there, and also to make the mudroom function at the proper height related to the ground, because right now it's basically on the ground because it's at the back of the garage. The addition itself meets the side yard requirements. The minimum on that side required is 15 feet. The actual addition of the second floor is 15 feet 7, so that complies. The variance for side yard is only for the little entrance porch to get into the kitchen. And the other variances I'll talk about in a little while. So when we design the inside, if you study the plans, I have a reasonable sized mudroom at the back of the garage that's attached to the house. We've enlarged the entrance porch so you could come up the side route, opening the garage doors and get into the mudroom direct or into the kitchen. So that's going to make it a more useful mudroom and allow the space in the garage to function for the cars, because it'll be a good distance, and also place for bicycles and other things that lawn mowers, things like that we need on our property. The powder room in the existing was very small. We moved it back so it's not facing into the kitchen. It's off the mudroom, and we're able to make the plan nice on the inside. It gives us place for coat hanging, shoes, everything that we need to come in. Basically, this house functions from the backyard most of the time, and guests can also then have a place to hang their things in the mud area. In the master, what we did was we improved the bathroom by moving it closer to the middle of the existing house. We were able to compartmentalize the toilet, improve the sinks and the shower area, and we were able to get good closet space for the improving this property, especially as related to other homes. So that's essentially the architectural project, and we've added some detail, the shutters, the pent roof, in order to improve on the property. This drawing you have is the plot plan. It's the first sheet. It illustrates the property. You can see that it's a through lot with Ashland at the top and Plymouth Road, the address of the house, at the bottom of the page. You see in hatch the addition we've added. It's over existing paving. We don't really need to adjust the paving there. We are going to adjust the patio in order to make the existing patio that's not compliant on the western side of the lot. It was pointed out by the zoning official that who helped me understand this project, that the patio was non-compliant, and we were able to rearrange it, eliminate the non-compliant part, and now it complies with the 15-foot setback. We are also, by doing that and building over existing paving, we were able to actually reduce the lot coverage on this property. So we're improving that situation. I think we've reduced it about a full 2%. I'll go over those numbers in a little while. This does not affect any trees on the site. All the larger trees are near the perimeter. It does not affect any other vegetation on the site. Essentially, the view from the off-site, especially on Ashland Road, will essentially remain the same as far as the tree cover and the planting. It actually remains as it is. In the past, the fence and the entrance gates were changed to bring them compliant, which they weren't. They were closer to road. They've actually been brought level with the other properties, and the gates meet the requirement that was pointed out to me that it had to be at least 20 feet from the edge of the road, and they're a little bit over that as existing. So we're not touching any of the gates or the fencing. It all is compliant at this point. One of the things I did investigate when I first started this project, because I was curious if there was any, and needed to know if there was any previous variances, and the zoning officer at that time, Krista Anderson, confirmed there were no variances of record. Because the existing house is only about 11 and a half feet. All our addition from the side property line, all our addition complies well with the combined setback and also with the minimums. So we basically came up with a design that we felt could be considered reasonable and in response to zoning requirements, and we feel that it contributes architecturally to the existing home. So in going through the design, in reviewing the variances that were required to accomplish this, important one would be building coverage. And we increased from 15.8% to 18.4. 18.4 is just a little bit over the allowed for total building coverage. It's about 38 square feet, I believe, only too much. That's how it's been calculated. So very de minimis amount for building coverage. And lot coverage, by moving and adjusting the patios and by building over existing coverage, we're actually reducing lot impervious from 38.9 to 36.9 impervious coverage. It's basically a flat lot. There's no change to runoff at this point. It's been mentioned that there was no change. It appears to be no change, and I should address that from the engineer's report. And it basically stays as is, and we're not pushing more water towards any other property. Of course, it comes under scrutiny if past a variance, that would be reviewed in the future if there was any issues, and that would have to be considered. But at this point, we don't believe that there's any issues that. Now, the through lot requires us to do a 40%, essentially a front yard calculation of 40%, as opposed to the minimum 35%. And the 40% forces us to calculate out that 56 feet is required. Now, a standard, if that's essentially functioning as the rear yard, a standard rear yard is 45 feet for the zone. Our request is to be 42.8, so we're a little bit more than a standard rear, it's a little deficient from a standard rear yard by 2.2 feet or so. So we're trying in this design to try to be compliant as if we were a rear yard, even though it meets the definition of a through lot. And as I mentioned, the side yard setback, it's only the little small porch that gets into the kitchen. The addition itself complies with side combined and side minimum. That leaves us with floor area ratio. The garage area is 445 square feet, so it didn't actually use up quite all the amount that would be allowed for a garage. So that pushes more into the living space because it's not considered garage. Now, the floor area ratio is a planning design tool to try to reduce the bulk of the building and keep it down. Now, one of the interesting things about this house that I discovered when I measured it was that the house is so low compared to zoning. At only about, I think I said 26 and a half feet, it's about 10 feet less than the zone requirements. So even though the floor area ratio is higher, we're essentially working with the bulk and mass of the building. And by the building being as low as it is and essentially not going any higher, and we're well in compliance, so I feel that the floor area ratio is addressed to be not a severe condition in this specific property, in this specific house. Also, the house is a contributing structure in the neighborhood. Doing this is helping preserve a structure, which is part of the land use goal of approving a variance such as FAR variance. So what we're doing is we're adding not a significant amount of space, but we're improving things like the garage and the interior without making huge rooms, and we're preserving an existing structure that contributes in the neighborhood. There will be no changes at the front of the house at all. And if you come on Plymouth and you look at the front, if you're looking from the southwest side, You can barely see where this addition would be. And coming from the right side down the street, you really can't see it at all. And also, in looking at this proposal, I observed other houses, and it's in the packet with the photos. I have another photo over here that I could talk to. In the application packet, this photo,
Microphone.
Google Maps.
Just make sure you use a microphone.
Sorry, we got
Yes.
roasted on that, to make sure we do it.
I prepared an additional photo board, one, because the photos that I had to present in the application were all during rainy, dreary days, and I was having a hard time finding a good day to take pictures in the spring. So I took new pictures with better lighting. The photo in the middle is in your, on the upper, in the middle is in your packet. It's the same photo, which I put a line across it. You could see that the property directly to the southwest or the left of the front is further back than our existing house is now. And the next two properties beyond that also go back with garage extensions and a second floor on them also. If you look at my photo board, on the upper left is a picture of the subject property, the facade that we're going to push back towards Ashland, and I believe we've improved the architectural context of that facade. If you look below that, on the left and in the middle, I was trying to illustrate that you could see the remainder of the house that is untouched, and also the patio portion that's going to be removed, which is an eating area. We're readjusting it and reducing the impervious coverage. The last photo on the bottom right is intended to show that you could see the extensions of the other homes that go back further than this one does now. And we're either going to be similar or actually less than one of the properties that are to the southwest. We won't extend back as much. So I was trying to illustrate that with these photos. And that's where that is. So I did get the report, and I think it looks like the consulting zoning officer, Lindsay Knight, agreed with the variances as I presented them, outlined and advertised, and it meets what I wrote. She asked me in that report to give testimony on the size of the lot and the area, which I did. The lot is undersized, it's under width, and it has the challenge of being 2 front yards, essentially. The engineering consultant asked me to say that there's no new grading proposed, and I have said that, I believe. It talks about soil erosion and sediment control. When I plan, if this is approved and I turn in for a permit, my plot plan will usually show the silt fence and have the commentary about soil on the site, and that'll go in not as a formal grading plan, but as a plot plan, because a formal grading plan, I believe, is not required. If it is required, we would, of course, provide it, but we're not adding any new impervious surface, and I believe at this time we aren't required to provide that, but if we are, we will. The city forester agreed that the existing screening is adequate, and no trees are or significant changes to any landscape. It's really affecting hard surfaces or lawn.
Just go back to Forster 1 second. He said with only minor modifications. Do you have any idea what he might have meant, or does the applicant have any idea what he might have meant by saying it'd be adequate with minor modifications?
That was the forester?
Yeah.
Minor modifications.
He's usually not that vague.
I mean, then
Appears to be adequate, only minor modifications. He might be referring to changing the lawn area by moving the patio around. There's no other really landscape materials that we're touching or trees.
I'm not sure I want a condition based on that, but I'm just wondering if there was any thought what he meant.
I thought you were fluent in Lindsay.
I thought I was by now, but that's,
Yeah, I don't think he means that it would be adequate with minor modifications. I think he's saying it is adequate, and they are proposing only minor modifications.
okay. I'll go with that.
That's my reading of it.
I'll go with that, okay.
Okay. The historic HPC commented that it was matching the existing architecture. I pointed that out. The turn gable, they were in agreement, and I believe that they were favorable, it appeared to me, when I read the comments. Will of course meet all building codes for expansion of a house. That's part of the building permit process, and that will be turned in at the time. It involves smoke detectors, fire detection, electrical, plumbing, all those things will be addressed, of course, if approved for this. So in summary, I believe we've presented a reasonable addition and addressed trying to stay within the ordinance. Obviously, we couldn't, but I did note that everything except the through lot condition, we would be able to meet if it was a full-size lot by a significant amount. The through lot, even though we're in violation a number of feet, if it was a rear yard, we'd only be in violation 2.5. And that's the reason I felt that that was a reasonable request, that it would not be considered a significant intrusion. And I believe that's it for me. I think
Okay.
I've addressed what's necessary.
Questions from our professionals?
So could you talk about any screening that you're proposing to change around the air conditioning units? I know you're changing something about the patio. Does that affect anything with the landscaping or screening around that?
A little bit hard to see in the photos, but the air conditioning systems are tucked in behind a fence that's near the one-story existing section, and I believe there's no proposals to change that. We would be able to put any adjustment inside there. There is a discussion, if it actually goes to permits, of how we're going to change heating and cooling systems, and I believe we would be eliminating one in the basement and putting it in the attic to address the heating and cooling better for the extension and upstairs. Because it goes all the way from the basement up across the garage ceiling and then into the second floor, which doesn't make a lot of sense, especially with an extension. So the HVAC will still remain screened the way it is now. It's not moving locations.
And so they already testified that they're reducing the impervious coverage on the lot, so that doesn't affect any of the stormwater. They're not required to mitigate for any of that. So I don't have any further questions on this one.
Just to make sure we're on the same page, whatever you do with the air conditioning will comply with municipal statute.
That's correct. We will comply with zoning and building.
I'm talking about the air conditioners because we do run into that every once in a while where people say, well, this is what we can do. No, you got to do it this way. Okay, questions from the board? Yes, sir.
Just building off if you could walk me through the trade-off of understanding the through lot, the calc, and thinking about it from a rear lot perspective.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
So thinking through, maybe walk me through how you evaluated the extra kind of 2.5 feet or 2.2 feet for the rear yard, even though it's kind of front yard?
Yes.
Through lot?
Yes.
As you thought about designing the home, like what was the trade-off there?
The through lot setback from
Yeah,
Ashland?
instead of complying within the 45 feet, which would have been, if it were not a through lot, and coming in at 42.8.
Yeah, if it were not a through lot, if it was a standard rear yard, we would have to ask for a variance to go from 45 feet to the 42.8 that's requested.
Right.
So it would be a little deficient. The other variances, I said, if it was a full-size lot, would likely be eliminated completely. But that variance for the depth of the lot at 130 feet, with a 45-foot rear yard requirement, we would still, that is one variance that would not disappear. We would still need a variance for a rear yard for 2.2 feet, although the variance we require for a through lot is significantly more. It's required to be 56, and we got 42.8.
Got it. I was just wondering what the benefit to the home of the additional 2.2 feet were.
for this property and the garage. It adds the proper space in the garage to be able to park the cars and still have space in the cars, and also achieve the mudroom that we're trying to put inside the house that the house does not have now. So it also helps the design of the master bedroom suite upstairs to keep that 2 feet in the design. And visually, it would not change anything significantly to eliminate that 2 feet, and it would make it deficient on the inside for the space.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, a couple questions. We've had a couple applications on this street over the years. One not too long ago. It's very unusual. The through lot is a very unusual circumstance. Entering in and out of Ashland, I'm sure, has its own nightmare, horror stories, whatever. But I have a couple questions. So actually, let's talk about the second front yard setback, the rear yard, front yard setback. I get you're trying to make the argument that if it were a normal rear yard, it would be 45 feet, so it's really on a 2.2 foot variance. But the fact is, there is a separate rule for this kind of second front yard, so you're actually asking for a variance from 56 feet. And I think you maybe make a good argument, but I mean, do you think that, is there any special thing you want to add to that argument? Because you're really asking for a variance from 42.8 from 56. I get what you're trying to say about the 45, but it's
Do your
pretty big
clients
ask.
use that space as a backyard?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
it's separated, it's,
I think
yeah,
that
there's grass, and if I could also just add that it's unusual the way our property is set up, and also that our neighbors, there's a busy road between us.
Yes.
So we don't actually even know a lot of the neighbors because it's so separated. I just wanted to add that.
Also, if it was a standard front yard, it would only be 35 feet requirement even. So it's kind of penalizing the homeowners for, and it's an unusual lot, it's an unusual condition, that's why we're here. That's why it's put in there, so that a board could evaluate its benefits outweigh the detriments. I feel that the benefits do outweigh the detriments in this case. Similar to some other, about 5, if not 6 houses on the block that have similar situations. And there are actually a couple that are a little bit closer. I don't know the exact number, but visually you can see that they're closer to Ashland than this proposal.
Yeah, I'm glad, I wanted to hear some kind of testimony like that. FAR variance, so it's an undersized lot, I'm sure at least part of the variance is driven by that. What would, if this were a normal sized lot for the zone, what would the FAR be? Do you know, or could you calculate it?
Well, the FRB for 15,000 square foot
Yeah.
requirement, I think it's 21.2%.
So you'd be
So way
under,
under
you'd be
25.
under if
Be
we're,
significantly
yeah.
less. The floor area ratio would be 3750 allowed, and we're 3178 proposed.
Okay.
So we wouldn't even be near the 25% requirement.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Significantly, yes.
I just have one question. So this lot is sized more like an R10 lot, basically, right? And that also has an FAR of 25% permitted. So I'm just kind of trying to compare, like, if you took, if this lot were somewhere else, I know it's not, what would the requirements be? And I think the FAR is one that would stick, but some of the other setbacks, like the minimum side yard setback of 13 feet versus 12 feet, that would probably be a non-issue. I guess it's sort of proportionally for this lot. In your experience, you feel like this is appropriate?
Exactly.
Right.
We feel it's appropriate. That's why the requirement is there, so that a board could evaluate whether it's an appropriate request for this lot, for the architecture, for what it's achieving, and how it doesn't disrupt anything, other aspects of the zoning ordinance, land use. I think it meets that criteria, that it's responsive to the neighborhood, it's responsive to land development requirements, the height being significantly lower, also will control bulk. Like if this was a full height house, asking for that floor area ratio, I don't know if I would approach that. But because it's so low, the house almost 10 feet lower, I And this part's even a little more than 10 feet lower. I think it's a reasonable request. Sorry.
And this house was built prior to zoning, right? And it's already over.
What's over?
It's, you listed at 26%, right, the existing?
The existing, yes.
Right. So it's not like you're under and you're going over, you're already
We
over.
weren't under to start.
Yeah, right.
But the garage was deficient, so if we just made the garage bigger, that wouldn't have increased. Because the garage would exclude 575 square feet, but our garage is only 445 square feet, I believe. So there's still like an extra 100 square feet of leeway. If it was garage, it would come off that floor area ratio. So it's kind of a balancing act, playing with a reasonable design, a reasonable size, and asking for it that way.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? We only have one public left. Okay. Okay. No more questions from the public, no more questions from us. Is there anything, anybody in the public want to tell us what they think about it? No, because there's nobody here. So we'll go to, well, maybe the little guy wants to say something. I don't know, but it doesn't, I believe you're all for the next case, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have anything to give us as a wrap-up?
No, I think she said it, obviously, kids who play a lot of sports, we'd love to have this mudroom and really help with the house, and thank you for your time.
We appreciate it.
Okay.
I guess the last thing I would have put in is that this is not just benefiting these homeowners, this is benefiting anybody else that would purchase this house in the future. This is official in the things that we are addressing and trying to fix in this condition, situation.
Okay. Number of votes and conditions.
D variances, well, 1 D variance is required, so 5 votes are required to approve it. And we just have our one usual condition, which is compliance with the conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum.
Okay, who would like to kick it off? I'm going to start on this side. Who wants to start it on this side? Go ahead. You've got it.
Yeah, so I think, considering it's an undersized lot, being thoughtful about lot coverage and reducing that trade-off with the space between the garage and usable space within the house, I think it's thoughtful use of the space. I can certainly support this.
Okay, anybody else want to? Don?
Yeah, I support this proposal. But one of the things that troubles me with lots like this is, and I shouldn't say lots like this, but sometimes we get ourselves into things where we buy properties and the conditions exist when we buy it, and then we try to change it all. I'm a little concerned about the bulk of the house, even though it's smaller. I think this is, I support it. I'm just, I looked at the other houses in the neighborhood. Some of the additions were 1 story, some of them were 2. We got to get to a point where like, hey, okay, this is the house exists, that's the way it is. Let's not make it worse than it already is, and you are improving it a little bit by reducing some of the coverages. But like I said, I do support this project. I just think moving forward, we all need to keep an eye on things like this, that's all. So I do support this project.
Okay. Mr. Vice Chairman, you look like you were ready to go.
Oh, I didn't realize I was giving off that vibe. I always appreciate projects that show restraint, and I think this falls squarely into that category. They're clearly improving the usage of the house. They're keeping the architectural style consistent with the existing house, which is very attractive to begin with. And I think what they're asking for is entirely reasonable, and they're getting major improvements with sort of minimal impositions onto the variances. So with that, I can
wholeheartedly support this application.
I know these through streets are part of our report to the planning board, to try and straighten out some of the issues, some of which have been brought up here. So I think we're kind of handling it this way, the way we actually recommended to the planning board to change it. But we'll see what happens if they get around to doing that. No, anyone else have any comments to make? If not, I would accept the motion to approve it.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Almost got to that point. Roll call, please. Takes 5 votes.
Vice Chairman Loikett,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Good luck. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And the last case of the night, but not the end of our business, we will be doing business after we're done. 10 Waldron.
Do we have a recusal, Mr. Chairman?
Pardon?
Do we have a recusal? Oh, he's just leaving?
Yeah, he's leaving.
Okay.
Don leaving? Are you leaving?
No.
Oh.
We're just consolidating here.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll be done by then.
Okay, as we move on, we're going to swear in 3 people? Is he going to be able to answer?
We'll just worry about. We'll worry about the 2. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And one at a time, please state your name, spell your last name.
Oh.
Kristen Toohill, Kristin, Toohill, Touhill, at 10 Waldron Avenue.
Thank you. And same
Already
thing.
swear.
All right, yep.
Peter Toohill, Peter, Peter, T as in Tom, Ouhill.
Okay, can you, whomever it is that's going to be telling us what it is you're looking for, what the variances are, and then I'm assuming you're going to let your expert take over.
Correct. So, Kristen and I have been in Summit since 2009 when we were married. We rented on Summit Ave. We bought our house. We had the opportunity in 2009 when we were, we bought it in 2010 when we were 25 years old. So we were pretty young for our block, I would say, at the time. We did a bunch of work at the time. The house had been occupied for over 50 years. It was an eyesore in the neighborhood. We spent every penny that we had doing the work that we could. But we left our 3rd floor, which had 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, but it was partially gutted. Not sure why. We left that there because we didn't have any kids at the time. Fast forward to today, or last summer really, my wife was pregnant with our 5th child. And we also our roof was leaking, and also like the original cedar shakes had started to leak on occasion when there was like horizontal storms. And so she went trying to get quotes to get it fixed, just had no luck kind of in the summer into the fall, and just trying to get quotes really to get this redone. And then in October, one of the guys came, it was like on a Monday, one of the roofers, and was like, if we start on Friday, I can get this done like in the next week. And so we just wanted to get it done before the winter, and we said yes. I don't think that needed a permit, but we also had a frame out 3 dormers. We had wanted the dormers just for additional light egress windows, and also just makes the house look a lot better from the street. We had thought we might needed a framing permit, but we were planning to subsequently do plans to refinish the 3rd floor, and just thought we could add that to like the framing permit when we did it. We hadn't considered like a zoning variance would be needed, or hadn't even like occurred to us. And also just appreciate everyone's patience. I know, that was, November of last year. We've had a lot of personal stuff going on. And then we've also, in the last number of months, after talking with our architect, decided maybe we want to expand the house a little bit. And so we're in the process of working on plans to do a very small expansion. We have an engineer and a planner engaged. Their plans aren't done yet, the engineer and the planner, or their stuff, and the engineer couldn't make it tonight. But I know the board wanted us to come talk about the dormers tonight, so here we are, and we have Doug Miller, our esteemed architect.
Okay. Questions for the applicants? Okay. Marie? Okay. Then I assume, I'm not even going to ask about the public. For the record, there is no public remaining. So I'm not going to bring that up again. You're going to turn it over to your, okay, so let's do that.
Hi, good evening.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Yeah, Douglas Miller from AHM Architects, located at 281 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. Miller is M-I-L-L-E-R.
Thank
Okay.
you, and I believe you've appeared before us recently as well. Any changes to your credentials since the last time you were here?
No, my license is still in good standing. I've made numerous presentations to boards in the surrounding communities as well, and been accepted as an expert.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
I think we can accept his credentials, and I'm going to ask you a question up front. We're talking about dormers that have been done already?
Yes.
Okay, so we're only talking about that. We're not talking about any other work to be done in the future, which will require a return visit.
Exactly, yes. We're focusing
Okay,
solely on the
I just want to make
dormer
sure we
specific.
all got on the same page, because there had been a lot of discussion back and forth, et cetera, so now we all know where we are.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about, gee, I did this, how do we legalize it?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, this is the situation we find ourselves in. I noticed everybody had the board over there, their presentation boards, but with the microphone situation and considering there's no public's view to be blocked, would it be okay if I kept the board close to me here?
Sure, do whatever you want.
Perfect.
It's fine. As long as we can all see it, I'm sure he's
Can you
going to be
see?
very happy to see
Yeah,
it.
it's going to be
Close it.
closer to them for once. Yes, exactly. So as Pete had just mentioned, their goal is really to improve the functionality of their attic. With such a large family, they need additional bedroom space. And they wanted to improve the curb appeal of their house. The house is an existing 1920s, nondescript Dutch-style colonial, and they wanted to see, how they could really enliven it and bring it more in line with the other houses in that community. So let me briefly describe the project. Our lot is approximately 52 by 144, or 8,788 square feet, smaller than the required of 10,000 square feet in the R10 zone. 75 foot is the width requirement, so much narrower than required. The existing lot width, the right side setback, the percentage side yard setback, lot coverage, building coverage, and floor area ratio are all existing non-conforming. So when we looked at what to do, or I guess when we've realized what the situation is, there would be no other way to expand this house without variance relief. So what we are asking for is a variance relief, a D-variance relief for the construction of these three dormers. These are the same drawings that you have before you. We're increasing the floor area ratio from the existing non-conforming 2,325 or 26.45% up to 27.07%, which is 2,379. So we're increasing it by a modest 54 square feet or 0.62%. The site has a very long driveway that goes along the right side to a detached garage, which, just a note, has existing non-conforming rear yard setback as well. I'll go through the plans a little bit. We drew the whole house just so you could kind of see the arrangement. The first floor consists of basically 5 rooms. There's a foyer, living room, kitchen, family room, dining room, sunroom. No changes are proposed on this floor. On the second floor, there's 4 bedrooms. 3 children's bedroom and a primary with a bath, and there's also a hall bath. The bedrooms are extremely small, at least 2 of them. One is 10'8" by 9'9", and the other is 9'2" by 7'7". So extremely small bedrooms. The second bedroom is smaller than what would be required in a modern house to meet code. The third is more reasonable at 12 by 12, but there's no changes to this floor either. The only real change is on the attic level, is the addition of these 3 dormers here. This is the existing attic consisting of a study/bedroom, a hall bathroom, a hallway, and some storage space. And what we're proposing to do are these 3 dormers. I'd like to note that the additional area of these dormers does not make the attic an attic story. It's still a conforming house. It's less than 30% of the floor area below. So it's not adding to the attic story rules, so that is in conformance. The next drawings are the existing elevations. You can see it's just a typical Dutch colonial. And this is the proposed. You can see that the 3 dormers kind of really enliven the house and really bump up the curb appeal. I have a rendering I put together, just a before and after. I found a picture from 2022 that showed what the house looked before. I don't know if any of the board members, remember the house before the dormers were added, but I could hand that out.
Was this included in the packet?
It was not.
Okay, so this will be A1.
These are both photographs?
They're both photographs, yes. The lower photo, there was grills added to the upper window in Photoshop, but otherwise it's the way the house looks at present. The lower photo was taken by myself. The upper photo was taken from a Google Street View from 2022. So you can see that the changes to the house that the 2 Hills have done have really bumped up the curb appeal, really enlivened it, made it a much more attractive house. So as I stated previously, it's just for the increase of floor area for the attic space. So a few reasons why I believe that the variance should be approved is all the hardships of all the existing non-conforming conditions. The 3 dormers are going to be all constructed within conforming setbacks. It's going to be over existing building space, so there'll be no change to the building footprint, no changes to the site, the grading. And if our lot was conforming at 10,000 square feet, we would be conforming for FAR. So we would be permitted to have 2,500 square feet of floor area ratio, so it would be below that at 2,379. And the property is unique in the fact that it's bordered by a large church to the left, so along this side, it's not on this drawing, but on this side, there's a large church with a completely paved parking lot. And along their back property line, it's the B zone, and there's a commercial dance facility. So they're surrounded on the left side and the rear by commercial structures. So there's significant bulk on those lots. And I think our house, by being the first in the residential zone, and if you drive down the street, there's kind of an eclectic mix of houses and housing sizes. So I think our house can easily accommodate it. And I think that the improvements definitely outweigh the detriments. We also looked at the comments from the different departments in the town, and the only departments that had any comments were zoning and the HPC. And the HPC thought the dormers might be a little bit too large, and they didn't want, they wanted to see some grills on the upper windows. So that's why it's shown in the rendering that I have given you. The 2 Hills are going to add those grills to the attic windows to make those windows match all the existing windows on the house. And I also have a photo board I'd like to submit. It was not part of the package. And we can maybe mark this A2. So these are all photos taken by me in December of '23, and those are the ones without any foliage on the trees, and the others are from July of this year. The house, the whole neighborhood or the street is made up of mostly historic appearing houses, a variety of styles, some colonials, some Dutch colonials, some craftsmen's, Victorians, all different styles. There's even a odd bi-level and a Cape Cod that don't really fit into the context of the neighborhood. I think if you look at the house, I think these dormers that they add really go a long way to fitting into the context of the neighborhood. A lot of the houses have dormers, and when you think about dormer size, you have to think about, what's appropriate. I think design is something that's very subjective. Some people may look at a house and say, oh, look, those dormers look too small, or those dormers look too big, or those look proportionally correct. And if you go down the street, some houses have dormers that appear to be too small, like the house next door, or dormers across the street that at 7 that look to be proportionally right. And so by having a variety of dormer scales, I think adds to the texture and fabric of the community and really makes the houses look unique. You don't want every house to have the same size dormer, the same configuration of dormers, because then it starts to look like a tract development. And I think what we've done here is create something that's attractive, makes the attic much more functional to give them that much needed bedroom space that they need. And so overall, I think the benefits outweigh the detriments. It makes the house safer by creating a more practical bedroom, increasing the daylight in that space, making it more habitable. So I'd like to end my presentation there and open up to the board for any comments or questions.
Do you have to mark that one? Stephanie, did we mark that?
It's 8-2.
Okay. I know your office is getting crowded. Questions? Start with you.
So there's no changes to the site being proposed, and it's only a floor area ratio, so there's no engineering comments on this.
Did I miss it, or did you not talk about the driveway?
I did not talk about the driveway.
Okay, the driveway is also in Krista's note that it was built not to the way it was supposed to. Does the applicant have anything to tell us about that? Or you? Either one. It can be either.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I think it was over 10 years ago. It's hard to remember, honestly. I think my wife kind of remembers going into the office, but it's just, we didn't get a permit, and it's a little bit expanded from where.
She got the permit. She didn't get the second permit.
Oh, so anyway, yeah, that was going to be kind of covered in our next presentation. The engineer, ultimately, like the part that was expanded, we're actually going to look to remove anyway.
So you're going to leave, you're going to try and leave here tonight without dealing with the driveway nonconformance?
Yeah, I think the board wanted us to come tonight. We were trying to just do it all in one presentation, but we weren't ready, and the engineer couldn't make it tonight.
Well, because it's been dragging on. And
yeah, no, I get it. I totally appreciate that.
And we need to get it done.
Agreed.
Or take it off, or whatever.
So I want to make sure I heard right. What are you saying you're going to do with the driveway and the?
Ultimately, I think it just got expanded by a little bit.
The permit application, if you read Krista's memo there, it tells you that the permit application wound up being deleted because they didn't send in the grading permit. So she had to hunt it down.
So, but.
This was in 2012. They got a permit application for paving the driveway. But that's not the way it was paved. The permit application was, they said they had to get a grading permit that was required. They never filed that. And because they never filed it, construction just took it out of the file.
Wait a second, the permit was granted to pave the driveway? They paved the driveway, but then how did we discover that it was not paved to the permit
Yeah,
drawings that were
there's
filed.
there's more there than that's permitted, right?
There's a
more-
lot here, yeah.
Yeah, so
There's a lot of violation here,
Yeah.
is what we've got.
Is that is there stormwater retention required for this driveway? Is that what is that what we're talking about, the grading permit?
Well, because it's over lot coverage by lot.
Well, I mean, just for paving a driveway, does anyone know if there was a requirement for stormwater, like dry wells and all that?
I don't.
Is that what she's
believe
talking
there
about?
There would be, at the figures they're at now, 44%,
there
35
would
is
be dry
permitted.
well.
It would have triggered and it's over 300 square feet of impervious coverage beyond what's permitted, so it would trigger stormwater management.
And that's the issue.
But is the applicant proposing to leave there what's there, or?
We don't have like the engineer with the topographical survey and all that to like, I think, fully address to fully address those nonconformities. So,
I don't know how we can speak to this without expert testimony.
yeah, well, that's why,
I don't either.
I'm
Yeah.
happy to, if we want to,
Which is what they were directed to bring.
Yeah, so you're asking us to vote on the FAR, but we're going to hear more from you later on the lot coverage, you're
Yes.
saying, at a subsequent hearing.
yes.
Okay. Is that, does everyone understand that's what they're asking us to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we
No.
want,
It's not what I thought we were doing, but okay. I'm
But that's what
listening.
they're asking us to do.
I'm listening.
if we want to entertain that, do we want to impose a condition that the subsequent application be submitted within a certain amount of time so that everything is addressed timely?
I think we would almost have to, because otherwise the zoning officer is going to act. A zoning officer acts, you're going to court.
So I think what we would need to hear from you is when do you anticipate having those plans finalized and being able to submit that application?
Since go ahead. I know the engineer just came out to do the topographic survey, so they'll be starting on their engineering work. I don't think we would be able to make it to the next month's meeting, but I would say that our goal would be to make the following month. That way it would give the engineer time to put together all of their required documents submitted to the town, give the town engineer time to review them, give us feedback and make any appropriate adjustments, give comments to the board, and then when we come to that meeting, we should be able to address all those concerns at one time.
And at that time, our engineer, you'd have stormwater recommendations
Yeah.
at that time.
I would, comparing what was previously done to what was done without permits, right?
Okay.
And I don't, just to clarify, I don't think it's actually the amount of impervious coverage over what's allowed. I think it was the amount of increase. I think that's the way your ordinance is written.
Right.
So it would be 300 square feet. If they increase their impervious coverage by 300 square feet over what was previously there, then that's what would trigger the stormwater.
But if I'm not mistaken, a significant portion of the driveway, walkways, and all that stuff was added without a permit and contributes to that figure beyond what was permitted before. So I think, chime in if we're wrong, but I think that we're well over 300 square feet beyond what was previously permitted, right?
Yeah, I have really no knowledge of what was there before. It was all a surprise to me when we got the review from Krista Anderson. She has in the review comments a survey that shows, I guess, the state of the house when they came in to request the permit. So the vast majority of the driveway was there. I think the areas in question are this little kick out on the driveway here in the center of the backyard and this patio space. So I think those are the areas that differed from what was on the site when they purchased the property. So it's over 300 square feet, yes.
Okay.
Stephanie, what do we have available in October?
So we either have the 7th or the 21st.
And you have enough space on either one?
Yeah.
Which is your choice?
I mean, I prefer, it's whatever you think. I mean, the engineer has been very busy, so that's part of, been the delay.
I'm not,
I don't really know.
And this will be with no additional adjournments. We will hear it or dismiss it. And if we dismiss it, the zoning officer goes to work.
Agreed.
Is that something that the rest of the board can go along with? I know I feel like I'm dictating and pushing.
So I think we kind of
I think
had
we
this
have to do
discussion
it.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of this, yeah. I think you're right.
All right.
It's a very unusual
I'm being nice and
case.
saying the 21st, which gives you as
Okay.
far out as we can. And I would accept a motion without further notice, which means you don't have to go through all that, to
Mr. Chairman,
adjourn this,
are we bundling?
Are we
Bundling
doing the
the whole
dormers?
thing.
We're
With
doing the
that?
the
dormers then?
whole thing.
Good. Yes.
You're going to present everything in one shot, make it or break it.
But we don't need to renotice?
Correct.
Okay.
They don't need to renotice?
That's what Joe was
You
just
want to
saying.
renotice
I
it?
think if you're doing an addition to your house, I think you need to renotice. I mean,
Okay.
there's other stuff that you're
Oh.
going to be bringing in, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Now that you mention it, I do believe
Yeah.
the notice only specifically stated the 3 dormers, and it was silent
Okay.
about any additional coverage, so
Okay.
because that would need to include the other variances that we're seeking, yet additional notice would be prompted, unfortunately.
Okay, we can
Is
take
that
care of
acceptable? I'm seeing two different answers. One from the professional and different from the applicant.
Well, I
Sounds
strongly,
like it's legally required, so.
Legally
I don't think there's a
required.
choice.
Right.
I strongly recommend that you have your civil engineer do a thorough accounting of all the work that's been done since you've taken possession of this house. So we have a good understanding of before and after.
Like the renovation from 2010 and 11 and stuff?
Walkways, driveway.
All the site work.
Size and, all the
Outside.
site, the civil engineer.
Yes.
Okay.
And you will need to notice for anything that is new, that was not prior approved.
Yes. We
Is
can do
that-
that.
Is that what would fit?
Yep, all the new variances.
Okay, so
Yep.
October 21st, correct? Here.
Motion.
I would take a motion if possible.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
I think I'd like to do this one by roll call.
Vice Chairman Loikis,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Mr. Malay, Ms. Chico,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, we'll see you then, and please contact Stephanie, contact, the appropriate experts here at Town Hall so that you come, because the one thing we don't want to do is refer something back to the zoning officer for a court action. We don't want to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay, we have a number of things to do still, and I lost my place. Go ahead, Stephanie, I think you're up.
Okay. So we have a resolution for memorialization. It's 190 Kent Place Boulevard. That's Jordan Glassberg. That's block 1402, lot 7, ZB-24-2242. The eligible voting members are Chairman Steiner, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Zahn, Mr. Curran, Mr. Malay, and Ms. Toad. Do we have someone, would someone like to move that?
I'll move it.
Okay, okay. Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Ms. Zahn,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth. Whoops, she's not here.
You're not here.
Never mind, Ms. Toth.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries.
Okay, the next one is a little interesting. It's, this one is not, I don't know if we're going to vote on it or not tonight, but
We're
it's a
not gonna-
request
We're
for
not
a...
gonna vote on it
What?
tonight. Not voting tonight, it's just on for discussion.
It's on
tonight.
for discussion for a 4-year extension.
So
You want to
what-
explain it?
Yeah, so what happened was, this is 38 Ascot, by the way. So 38 Ascot Way, ZB-23-2211, block 4401, lot 40. It's Joe and Megan Delpreet. So what happened was they were approved for their variance. They came here. They plan to put an addition on their home. And then they noticed they had some mold in their bathroom, so they had a mold infestation. And these renovation plans for the bathroom kind of now made them need to push everything back. So they're asking for a 4-year extension on a variance request.
No.
I mean, Andy, what do you think of, I mean, what could change between now and then?
And that's the concern with
Yeah.
extensions going
Yeah.
on that long, is if the zoning changes, then that's the point of limiting the approvals,
Yeah.
is to guard against those zoning changes that may occur within the time period. So if you think it's more reasonable to cut down the extension that we're granting at this point to, you know, maybe half that, maybe something less, whatever the board is thinking. You know, of course, we now just recently bumped up our permit timeframe to 2 years for all ongoing applications. I don't believe this one fell within that recent change. So it's, you know, something to keep in mind on what we want to grant here, but yes, the potential for a zoning change is what you want to guard against with delaying it out too long.
And why is it only for discussion tonight, or?
So we could figure out where.
Because they were requesting 4, and before
Oh.
Yeah.
When does theirs expire, the
They
current?
were just granted earlier this year. I
Fairly
believe it
recently,
was
yeah.
January. So they still have until January of '25 to pull the building permit.
So it could be it could be like 5 years, really.
They would
If-
give
if-
5 total, and that's.
Right,
what- but-
yeah.
I'd be comfortable with 2.
Yeah,
Gives
2.
everybody.
2 sounds.
Okay,
much
would
more
you
reasonable.
suggest to them that that might be the appropriate request?
Okay.
So wait, 2 meaning 2 more, so it'll be 3
They
total.
get 2 years from the
2-year
expiration in,
January of
In January.
'25, so up to January '27.
so that would give them 3 total.
But the same 2-year extension the same 2-year period we're giving to every new application.
Right,
now.
but they
Yes.
already have 1.
I get that, yeah.
So they would have a total of 3 before they'd have to come back.
No, wait, so everybody else is only getting 2 total? They're getting
Everybody else
3.
is getting 2, but then they can go back for an extension.
Okay.
And I think anybody who comes back for an extension on a 2, we're probably going to say 1.
So it's 3 either way.
So in this case, she's getting 3. They are getting 3.
I'm good with 2.
Okay, and we're just letting them know that, and then their request will come back in writing,
Right.
and we'll
Would be
be
subject
able to
to
see
a-
what their reasoning for it is, which we now already know anyway.
Oh, so they haven't formally asked it, they're just trying to get our thoughts.
I'm sorry?
Take
They're
our
just trying to get our thoughts right now, they didn't formally ask it.
Right, because they're not at the deadline and because it's a significant request, we thought it was best to discuss it in general and see where it was going before having a formal resolution on for adoption without knowing the timeframes.
Makes sense.
And we offered them the opportunity to come to hear our discussion. Maybe they're watching on television, but and they did decline to do that. We have one more item of business.
Okay, so.
Minutes.
Yep, so that's the minutes. These are from July 15th. I would ask for a voice vote, and we would exclude the members who were not here that evening, who aren't here now anyway. It was Mr. Feskins and Mr. Curran. Would anyone like to move the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, and second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
And the last item of business is to say you're done for the month of August. Our next meeting is September the 4th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, we need to do that.
Thank you all.
Adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.